The Institute is dedicated to teaching students respect for practical politics and the principle of citizen involvement in government. The Hinckley Institute offers paid internships to students of all majors here locally, in Washington, D.C., and in over 35 countries around the globe. The Hinckley Institute also offers classes, the nation's only campaign management minor, week-long experiences to Washington, D.C., and over $70,000 in academic scholarships. We invite students to go next door or to visit our website, www.hinckley.utah.edu, for more information. The title of today's forum is The Ordeal of Human Trafficking and Organ Harvesting. Today's guest is Saleh Johar, author of Miriam Was Here, which is about human trafficking in the Horn of Africa, and author of Kings and Bandits, The Making of a Child Warrior. He is a noted speaker and activist, bringing attention to the plight of one of the smallest, least-known countries in Africa, Eritrea. Please join me in welcoming our guest.
Good afternoon. Thank everybody for coming, and thanks to Rebecca Hill, who organized this gathering, and thanks to the Hinckley Institute of Politics in Utah University for having me and for giving me this chance to talk to you. Many years ago, I was in a taxi going somewhere north in Thailand, and while we were driving on the road, the taxi ran over a snake. Obviously, the snake was dead, but the driver insisted on getting out of the car, going to where the snake was. He picked the stick, and he kept hitting the dead snake. I was just watching him. What are you doing? I asked. He said snakes have a habit of coming back and haunting whoever killed them. So I don't want to take a chance. And after killing it, it was almost flat with the asphalt. He went to the side of the road, he dug a hole to make sure that it doesn't get up, and he buried it. I have lived with a lot of superstition, in Africa. We have it a lot. So I was not surprised. But I kept thinking, this guy must have been very scared of snakes. Anyway, I'll come back to that. I'm very excited to speak to you. I hope most of you will be the politicians of the future by the virtue of you studying political science. You know that the current politicians have been letting us down for a long time, and I hope with this generation things will change. To me, those who study and pursue a career in politics, particularly when you live in a country which is a superpower, play or are expected to play an important role in the safety and well-being of the world. The rest of the disciplines, economics, engineering, and all others follow politics. In a politically impoverished country, the social well-being of the society is endangered. Good politics maintains a good society and thus gets humanity closer to its goal of pursuing happiness, unless, as we'll see in a while, one's happiness is derived from the suffering of others. Over the years, politics and politicians lost the glamour. Their jobs have become akin to gambling, and in turn, gambling has become, or changed its name, to a game. Just an innocent game, not a social vice anymore. In the past, a gambler would be considered an outcast, an untrusted individual in society. Today, gamblers are featured in TV shows and are treated as stars. The opposite happened to politicians. In the time of Benjamin Franklin, to be an ambassador carried heavy responsibilities. It was an important and prestigious position. Not everyone could be an ambassador. You would not find the equivalents of Franklin and Kennedy in today's ambassadors. Today, Kennedy probably wouldn't accept a position of an ambassador. And if he did, he would probably resign in frustration. Ambassadors do not have the frequent audience as in the past with, for example, the British Prime Minister, a position that has become a dull shadow of its glorious past. This has happened because advancement in the field of transportation, communication, information technology, and the rest. President Obama calls world leaders and talks to them directly. He can eat breakfast on a plane on his way to London, meet whoever he's meeting for a couple of hours, and probably return to his home, the White House, in the same day, thus diminishing the role of an ambassador. But that is not my concern for today. I'm concerned with what has happened with foreign policy, which has deteriorated as well. That is why the tragedy of human trafficking and cruel organ harvesting is going unpunished. In the past, elected or officials appointed by elected representatives ran the foreign policy of governments. And here I'm talking about the Western world. The rest, at least in this context, are inconsequential. To cope with modern development, Western governments have followed their corporations in outsourcing their tasks. Foreign policy is subcontracted, outsourced. The only consolation is that they are not outsourcing it to China, like in the manufacturing of sweatshirts, gadgets, and toys. The tasks are outsourced to shady entities with unelected officials, unaccountable officials, the execution of foreign policy by freelancers, the political NGOs. Yes, it has become an industry with a 9-to-5 career jobs. Western governments are treating third world countries as a franchise given to different political NGOs who have become more visible and better funded compared to the charitable humanitarian organizations that survive mostly due to the dedication of a few blessed people whose aim is to help the poor and the destitute. Not many of those who operate under the guise of conflict resolution, democratization, and all the good-sounding terms have lifted a finger to pressure the UN or their governments to do something about human trafficking and the gangs operating with impunity, particularly in the Sinai Desert, for example. Except for USAID, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and a few other small outfits with noble ideas, civic duty-minded people who really work hard to better the world, the rest have been big disappointments, at least for the third world. I've been waging this one-man fight that goes nowhere for a while now. And many people tell me, Saleh, you cannot fight well-entrenched, well-funded, influential NGOs. You cannot win. I do not fight to win. That is the yardstick of corporations and people who are driven by their ego. I fight to satisfy my conscience. I do what I have to do. Winning and losing is not my concern. But if enough people fight for a right cause, they certainly win, meaning their cause wins. I looked up in Wikipedia the 6th degree of separation theory. I'm sure some of you know it. It's a theory that states that everyone and everything is 6 or fewer steps away by way of introduction from any other person in the world, so that a chain of framed statements can be made to connect any two people in a maximum of 6 steps anywhere in the world. This is from Wikipedia. That assumed that there were 1.5 billion people in the world. That could be revised now as we are 6 or above. But the entire social network mediums like Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and the rest, they build their platforms based on such theories. It's a topic for mathematicians, social behavior scientists algorithms, and the rest. What about countries that are not very mobile? Societies like my country that is roughly 3 million people, give or take a million, because we never had a census since the 1950s. I would say, in our case, the degree of separation would be much less than 6. I learned the population of Utah is just around 3 million. Now I'll let you imagine, God forbid, if 366 inhabitants of Utah drowned in the Great Salt Lake in just one day. That is what happened to my compatriots from Eritrea 10 weeks ago on October 3rd. In that day, 366 Eritrean victims of human trafficking drowned near Lampedusa in Italy. To Eritreans, that was not a mere story. The degree of separation, as I told you, is so low that I know many victims who are friends of people I know, or those relatives of neighbors who perished in that accident. I know the father of one of the victims. When I was a child, we played football together. Now he lost his child. A heart-wrenching incident happened in that tragic day. One of the drowned was a woman who gave birth the moment she drowned. When the rescuers arrived, they pulled her up only to discover her baby is still connected to her. The umbilical cord was still intact, but both were dead. To us, human trafficking is not an intellectual curiosity. It's a real tragedy that leaves us in continuous state of mourning and sadness. In the last 6 years alone, it is estimated that about 8,000 Eritreans lost their lives in the Sinai Desert alone. Over 1,000 people drowned in the Mediterranean Sea. Thousands more in the Sahara Desert, crossing to Libya, from where they planned to continue to Europe or head east towards the Sinai to Israel. There are around 40,000 Eritreans who entered Israel. Almost all reached there through the Sinai Bedouin human traffickers. Many perished before they could make it to the Israeli barbed wire. Many were shot by Egyptian border patrols, and many just succumbed. Others were killed and their organs harvested. A recent report estimates the traffickers made around $600 million on that route alone in the last 6 years. In Sinai, dozens of gangs are engaged in the crime of human trafficking. Harvested human organs is the major cash crop of Sinai. Thousands of victims went through the blackmailing and ransom rackets of Sinai. Many were raped, tortured, killed, and their human organs harvested, and their bodies were thrown in the desert where wild animals fed. The racket is everywhere. Ransom, which could reach as high as $50,000 per person, is collected in Israel, the United States, Europe, everywhere, including in my country, Eritrea, where there is a network of collaborators with the trafficking gangs. Eritrean communities abroad are going through a lot, selling their properties, depleting their lifelong savings, borrowing, collecting donations in churches and mosques and social gatherings to pay for the ransom of their relatives, to free a relative. If they don't pay, the traffickers harvest the human organs of the victims. And the organs, mainly kidneys, are sold in many places, including in New Jersey for $400,000 a piece. In 2011, some people pleaded guilty in Trenton, New Jersey, they were accused of organ trafficking to the U.S. The international audience was exposed to the human trafficking on August of 2009, when the Swedish journalist by the name Donald Bostrom reported on the Swedish Aftonbladet a story under the title, "Our Sons Plundered for Their Organ." It was around the same time that many people became alerted of the situation. Since then, the news has gotten more gruesome by the day. For Eritrea, we have a lost generation. Those being victimized by the Eritrean regime and then by the human traffickers are mainly young men. Loathing them would have negative consequences in the future of the country. The long-term effects are great. This age and gender imbalances will certainly have disastrous implications in the future, particularly in terms of reproduction. We cried, we appealed to the world to take action. Deaf ears. Maybe our voice was low. We don't have loudspeakers, we don't have the mics needed. The lives of those young people seems are not as valuable as a barrel of oil. There are a few exceptions. A few months ago, Ira Glass of NPR talked about the issue of human trafficking in a program, This American Life. But that's hardly enough to affect action. We need more Ira Glasses. There comes my indignation with the NGOs. When the human trafficking event started to unfold in its present magnitude, one would expect the world to take action. Those who should pressure for action were sitting in offices or traveling the world with the pretext of compiling a report about human trafficking. Very mechanical indeed. Would it be wrong to hire a mercenary force to blow up the Bedouin camps in Sinai? Of course not. Governments have been blowing up places for trivial reasons, less significant than that. Here, you could ask me, in fact, you could challenge me, why don't Eritreans do it themselves? Why do Eritreans pay ransom? If they didn't pay, the kidnapping would probably stop. But first, what would anyone in this room do if his sister, his brother, husband, wife, child fell in a hostage situation and risked the gruesome death at the hands of human trafficker? And if he was asked to pay a ransom, what would anyone do? That would answer the first question. This, I think, is a moral question, not a legal one, neither a political one. Second, a victim cannot be blamed for being a victim. My people have been victims for over 20 years under the current regime. Like all underdeveloped nations, Eritreans depend on their children to make a living. Villagers depend on the entire family to farm their land and harvest enough to survive. In our case, the government decided that it owns the youth the moment they reach 11th grade, at puberty. Thereafter, they are hauled to military camps for the final year of high school. This has been going on since 1993. Then follows the compulsory national service, whose time extends indefinitely. I have a relative who has been serving, sometimes carrying a gun and running from one battle to another, sometimes building roads, sometimes tending to a general's farm or building a house for him, for the last 16 years, with no pay. He was forcefully conscripted in 1997, when he was 18. Now he's 34, not married, never had the chance to have a home, to pursue his education, or to help his parents. Eritrean news are spread all over the country in slave labor locations, and their labor is extracted for free. Nefsen, a Canadian mining company, profits from such slave labor. Supposedly, the enlisted are paid 400 naqfa a month. In case you're wondering, that is equal to $8 a month. In addition to that, the regime in Eritrea is trigger happy. Endless wars with all our neighbors. We had war with Sudan, we had war with Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Yemen, all of our 4 neighbors. Now, it's provoking the US, and I'm serious about this. The Eritrean regime was at war with Ethiopia over a border town. The war ended in 2000. We lost 18,000 people from the Eritrean side only. 20 years after gaining independent statehood, Eritrea has emerged as one of the largest refugee-producing countries on the African continent, as well as the most militarized societies in the world. And since then, it's estimated that 5,000 people escape the country on a monthly basis, despite the shoot-to-kill order on the borders, through which the frustrated youth escape. To date, there are about 80,000 refugees in Ethiopia, around 125,000 refugees in Sudan, on top of the refugees already residing in Sudan since 1967, and who are estimated in the neighborhood of 500,000 people in Sudanese camps and towns. The UNHCR has closed the chapter on them. After the independence of Eritrea, they closed the chapter and they said these people can be assimilated, but nothing has happened for the last 23 years. They've been living in refugee camps. Trying to escape this reality is an opportunity for human traffickers. UN Monitoring Group for Somalia and Eritrea has implicated senior officials of the Eritrean regime for involvement in the racket of human trafficking and smuggling. Now, if such rogue regimes are not stopped in time, matters certainly deteriorate, and there would be a repeat of familiar actions of involvement in larger scales. Just like what we witnessed in Iraq, Somalia, the pirate activities in the Indian Ocean a few years ago, and so on and so forth. And those who watch from a distance now would be forced to get involved. The US might have to put boots on the ground, and suffering would be worse. And people here would have to cope with coffins and wasted resources. Isn't it better to try to stop it now? This is my message. As I tried to explain in my recent book, Miriam was here, human trafficking is a result of oppression and enslavement of Eritreans by a totalitarian regime. Human trafficking is a repercussion of tyranny and lack of respect for human rights, democracy, and basic justice. In short, it's the result of denying of basic freedom that a citizen should enjoy. Human trafficking is a worldwide phenomenon. There are hundreds of papers, books, movies, and documentaries that address it. I am focusing on Eritrea for two reasons. One, simply because I'm an Eritrean, and it's natural that it touches me more than the rest. I feel duty-bound to do what I can. The second reason is more important. The percentage of Eritrean victims of human trafficking is by far the largest compared to the other countries of the region. For example, the ratio of Eritrean refugees in Italy, the major gateway to Europe, is 2-to-1 compared to Syrians. Taking into account the population of Syria, which is 8 times bigger than that of Eritrea, it means for every Syrian refugee, there are 9 Eritrean refugees. And the world knows the carnage that's raging in Syria. It is awful. Yet, despite that, Eritreans are outdoing Syrians by 9-to-1 in escaping their country. Now, you have an idea how bad it is in Eritrea, particularly for the youth, mostly your age. The ratio reflects the level of dissatisfaction that Eritrean youth have reached. I do not know what would stop human trafficking. I know what would stop the supply of Eritrean victims to the criminals. The tyranny in Eritrea should be weeded out from the roots. I have taken a lesson on that from the taxi driver in Thailand who buried the snake. Now, what has the West done to elongate the suffering of Eritreans to the extent that they became commodities of human trafficking? Well, there is this policy mainly followed by Europe. It's called positive engagement, as if one has to engage a criminal. Europeans believe that if they treat tyrants nicely, they would miraculously become nicer to their people. Wrong. On the contrary, they have been given the tyrants legitimacy, funds, and a cover to continue to do what they do best, increase their oppression of their citizens. The West always cajoles and flirts with tyrants who wreak havoc in the lives of helpless people. I believe that democracy, a nation of free people like the U.S. should have nothing to do with tyrannies. Any relations should be severed. If they cannot help the people attain their freedom, then they should stop interfering and leave issues to their own devices. If it is a confrontation between the people and authoritarian regimes, I'm confident no tyrant would survive. Policies that undermine freedom of citizens for a barrel of oil or for trivial national interest should be shunned. Only then we can solve the problems associated not only with human trafficking, but with the overall lack of respect of human rights, freedom, and liberty. Thank you.
Any questions?
Oh, still?
Yeah, no, we're good.
So on the This American Life segment, there was a piece on nonprofits and charities who help pay ransoms in human trafficking cases. What is your opinion on charities helping pay that ransom?
It's as I said, it's a moral decision. It's not legal. Anybody who would sound authoritative about that is just not right. Because when you're a victim yourself, or imagine I have children, I don't know what I will do if my children went through that. It's a moral question. So I don't have any knowledge to answer that question. But yet, what I believe is that situations like this should be resolved from the root cause, not from the repercussions or manifestations. Ransoms and paying it or not paying it is a manifestation of the root causes. And the root causes are authoritarian regimes who don't give a breathing space to their people, who enslave their people so that they have to just live and face such risks. That is what we should address.
And is there something that we could do, like sitting in this room, to help make a difference in Eritrea?
Oh, I have a lot of hopes on that, because I want you to shake your politicians. I want you to shake your politicians. And you can only do it because you're voters. The rest of the people can just talk. But you can really make them do stuff that you want them to do. And what you would be asked them is not something extraordinary. It's what our humanity requires us to do the right thing. This engagement of dictators, engagement of authoritarians, because this sea channel would be closed, such and such will happen. All these theories are just a lot of people suffering because of these policies. And that has to change. Consideration should be human life.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You can say your name and major when you ask your question.
Hi, my name's Alice Redessel, and I'm studying social work here at the U. My question is similar to his follow-up question, but do you think that getting involved with our politicians is the most effective thing we as college students can do in order to help see the end of human trafficking? And if not, what?
To be honest with you, I wouldn't mind if there are some trained Marines who would form. I mean, I'm just being honest. I just go and blow these human trafficking camps. I would bless that. In my age, I can even volunteer to join if there are capable people of doing it. But short of that, I think what I said about pressuring your politicians is one, and spreading the knowledge is the second thing. For example, you mentioned the social media. This book took me a year and a half, but I'm not in the right demographics to promote it. So the distribution is limited. If I had to go through the regular publishing houses, it will take 2 years. By then, the case is done. It's useless. So stuff like that, you could help a lot on these things, just spreading the knowledge among your peers so that everybody has that knowledge. So that in the future, in your time, when you take the positions, when you are important people, hopefully.
My name is Tyler Glauser. I'm studying business at the University of Utah. And just a question, maybe a clarification. So would you support, you would be in favor of military action from the United States or another country to intervene and help with the current situation?
Which current situation?
Of
the trafficking?
The authoritarian regime.
No, not really. You see, this is where the thing becomes shady. I mentioned the military intervention as far as Sinai is concerned. If there is somebody producing some illicit products in a flat, what do the police do? They just go and, storm the place and arrest the criminal. Today, there are about 40 to 50 gangs operating in the Sinai Desert. The Egyptians don't want to get there or the Israelis, because they have this agreement in Camp David agreement that limits their military presence. So that place has become the Wild West, and everybody rules with impunity. And the Bedouins are just running amok. Camps and people are smuggled from everywhere, tortured there, raped there, killed there. So in such situations, of course, only military intervention, or whatever you call it. And that's why I'm calling for volunteers. That's the only way you can do it. Since Israel or Egypt, the two countries bordering that, cannot do anything when this is going for 6 years in their territory. Apparently, both of them are just watching. So that requires military intervention. The second thing is, diplomatically, the Europeans are a lot of this. Our dictator, for example, the dictator of Eritrea, he has been getting money, 100 million for this project, 50 million for that project. We have to engage him. We don't want him to go to extreme. What is the extreme? I mean, people are dying, people are suffering. But to them, I don't know what's the measurement, what's the right, if somebody comes probably, an Eritrean goes to London and does something nasty, probably that's what they call endangering our national interest, and they will move. But as far as they're not hurt, others can hurt, and they can keep on cajoling and flirting with the dictators. This is what I want to stop. If they cannot help positively, then they should save us their interference.
Thank you.
George Afida, Operations Management Major. Question is, from what you've seen, what country have you seen the human trafficking more prominent in? Or is it in general, is it in Europe, or is it more here in the United States?
No, it's as old as history. Human trafficking is not new. I've been to the Far East. I know a lot about it. Thailand, Burma, India, Kashmir, Tibet, all these places suffer. The Philippines, they suffer from human trafficking of different sorts. What makes our situation worse is the numbers. The sheer numbers are just too much to accept. We are only 3 million, and that is what I gave you as an example. Imagine 366 people dying in one day in Utah. How would you all feel? That would be a tragedy like no tragedy before. That is what is happening to us. 3 million people, but we are losing all this much people. So the magnitude is just great. It's overwhelming. So that makes it important. The second thing is, we are supplying the traffickers because of the situation at home. This is not your typical human trafficking for economic reasons. This is a result of lack of human rights, majorly lack of human rights, lack of respect for people, and enslavement of the youth. Imagine if you were taken by the federal government from 11th grade and you were just put on a boot camp to finish your high school in military camp, in a military environment, and after 1 year you're not let go, you will be driven to some project to dig roads like the chain gang for years and years and years and years and years. Your life is wasted just laboring for free. How would you feel about that? The moment he get a chance, he would escape probably to Mexico or to Guatemala or wherever. This is what is happening. So the situation at home is supplying the human trafficking. And if the supply line is stopped, then of course we wouldn't be suffering of the situation, or we wouldn't be suffering more than the rest of the region. So that is what makes it different in our case.
So my question is, are there any like groups in Eritrea like trying to like fight fight the cause for like the human trafficking and stuff, like fight against it?
You see, today, it's not like the 60s and 70s. You don't like the government. You just go to the mountains and you say, such and such liberation front, and you fight it out. Today, it's very risky to carry a gun, even to fight for your right. You know the implications. You're a terrorist, you're this, you're that. So there are that implications that have emasculated people from rising up and fighting dictatorships. This is a result of the last 10, 15 years. People cannot fight for their rights anymore. And it's true, our region is not a nice neighborhood. It's not a nice neighborhood. We have all sorts of sick stuff going on. I mean, nobody can deny that. But in the other hand, it has emasculated the people from fighting for their rights. To answer your question more directly, there are so many groups fighting the government because there is almost a consensus among Eritreans. People don't see human trafficking. They see dictatorship that is producing human trafficking. So all the struggle is against the government. And of course, what people like me do, this is what we do to fight it. Awareness and getting more people involved.
Hi, my name is Barbara Andrade. I'm a student here at the U studying political science. My question for you is, what can the governments do in those countries that have a lot of the human trafficking problems? What can they do to start changing that and to just start that process?
You mean the origin of the victims or what?
Yeah, just like what?
Like Eritrea? What can people in Eritrea do?
Yeah, and the government itself.
No, the government is creating that. So if somebody's a highway robber, then you can't just go and discuss with him, how can we stop highway robbery? Because that is what he does. He's not going to listen to you. So the government is creating victims of human trafficking, or people who fall into such risks by its wrong policies. Enslaving the youth is one. I mean, if you were put in a camp for 3 years, you would just, at the very opportunity that you get, you will flee, you will escape. So the government is not part of a solution. It is the problem. But the demise of the government would probably bring a solution. I mean, I don't think there will be a golden key solution to social problems, but a big portion of that would be solved as far as trafficking is concerned. The people are busy fleeing. They are part of the problem. They're escaping their country and they're exposing themselves to all sorts of risks. So if they could solve their problem, they wouldn't be falling into risks in the first place. But they want a better life. They want to be left alone. They want to be free to pursue what they need to pursue. And since the government is denying them that, they're trying to find it in their own ways.
I'm Eli Lacates. I'm a poli-sci major here. My question is in regards to both of your last two questions. You can see the global community moving towards more of a non-interventionist policy. And I was wondering, would you support more of taking action where we support people in Eritrea and places like that in a way like we did in Afghanistan and fuel them in a way that can give them the means to overthrow the oppressive government?
That's a good question. The first thing is, first of all, the intention should be clear. With all that is going on in Eritrea, there is no straightforward statement from the American government, for example, denouncing this regime, pulling the ambassador, or taking a drastic action just to register an objection. That is where we start from. We have heard of travel ban for the officials of the government 4 or 5 years ago, but we see all the senior officials coming and going, Washington and New York and all that. So there is some kind of unclear stuff in there. So the first thing should be, the intention should be very clear, unambiguous statement. The second thing is, we don't need battalions or fighter planes or anything. I mean, if people are not able to fight for their own freedom by themselves, they don't deserve to be free. I believe in that. I don't believe that somebody can come from thousands of miles away and give me my freedom. That doesn't work in my opinion. But able governments and able people and free-spirited people should help the people to gain their freedom, enable them, give them the material, diplomatic cover, political cover, and all that they need to affect change on their own. I mean, all the people who are suffering under dictatorships are not dummies. They love freedom just like anybody else, and they're willing to die for it. So they should be enabled.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Harry Witt. I'm finance and economics, and I just really would like a quick clarification. Where are the markets for this human trafficking and organ trafficking? I want to know who wants to buy these things, and what can those countries do to stop any economic activity of that sort going on? So how do we regulate this in the market countries where they're getting the organs and the humans?
First of all, such illicit trade, if that was possible, I think the United States could have stopped drug dealing. The whole U.S. is infested with drug dealing and cartels and all that. So that is just not possible with our resources, the resources that we have. But so far there is no task force to investigate this. UN, USA, Europe, all the able countries, they don't even have a task force to study and research this issue so that they can propose a solution. They haven't done that. As far as, there is also one thing that stands different to what you're saying. Those who are smuggled, they are collaborators in a way, because they are fleeing a hell from somewhere and they want to go to a better place. So in a way they are implicated. But they are the victims, so as I said, you cannot blame a victim. If somebody wants to escape towards freedom, he will do anything. And in the way, he faces all these risks. So it's kind of shady in there. But as far as the markets are concerned, this is not your typical, the Far East mostly suffers from prostitution. That is the main case, because they bring young girls for prostitution. So that there is a clear market in there. But in our case, the trafficked people are not being taken for prostitution and stuff like that. They're going to have a better life somewhere. In the way, they're just falling victims to the criminals. As far as the organ harvesting, I have no doubt that victims of the Sinai are, the organs are flying. They're not taking upward space flight. An organ can survive only about 48 hours. if kept in good situations. And to reach its destination, which is obviously the rich countries, you cannot accuse a poor country of being a market for this stuff. So it's either Europe, America, and stuff like this. And to get to this place, you need an airport. And the only airports in that area are either in Israel or Egypt. Okay? If we exclude Palestine, they don't have airports that great, I think. So there you have it. They have to fly the organs from one of those two places.
I have one. My name is Brian Smith, political science senior here at the U. There's a growing, not just in the international community, there's a growing trend, I think, in the country toward a more libertarian mindset where the U.S. being the world police and getting involved in these types of situations is frowned upon. I mean, it's a growing political viewpoint. So for those in the room who might hold that viewpoint, or in general in the U.S., how would you plead your case that it is something, the human rights are something worth fighting for, across the globe? And is it, I mean, where's the line between being the world police and providing the human rights for people that deserve it?
I will tell you a joke. It might explain this. It is said that a poor country was having some economic and social problems. So the cabinet met, and they were discussing how to solve their problems. So one of the ministers says, "Look, I've got a solution." And they asked him what. He said, "Let's declare war against the United States." And then they're saying, "What? I will just smash it to misery in a day or two." He said, "That is the point." He said, "Why?" Then they will put a Marshall Plan in place, and they will develop the country like Germany, and will solve our problems. But one of the guys said, "What if the United States is vanquished? What do we do then?" Didn't get the joke, I guess. Anyway, what I'm trying to say here is those two views are just like a simpleton who thinks that he can win, can go to war with America and win, and a guy who wants to lure America to a war so that he can have some kind of solution that he envisions. I think with the way the economy and the global situation is, even if if the United States wants to play hands off, it just can't. Its interest is widespread everywhere, and it will just be delaying and elongating the sufferings of the people. It has to get involved, but there should be a shift in the involvement. It shouldn't be this type of military mentality that we can squash anybody, so we'll go there and clean everything. That doesn't work. It should be more involved with those who feel victimized. And there are enough people in the third world, who are suffering from the tyrannies. And the first step is, as I told the other guy, the intention should be there. I mean, what does, say, America get from Eritrea? What does America get from Central Africa? What does it get from Burma? All these dictatorships. Nothing, no interest, no visible interest for the United States of America. What are our ambassadors doing there? It just defies logic. We have nothing to do with dictators. We should have nothing to do with dictators. So that would send a clear message. If you want to deal with us, you have to respect human rights of your people, good governance, justice, liberty, and freedom. Otherwise, we have nothing to do with you. How difficult is that? It's not. The second thing is, places like Saudi Arabia, for example. The government in the United States will deal with this regime, whatever happens. This attitude should be changed a bit. And this is a local change of attitude. Not everything should be ruled by finances and because you might win $2 million, $3 million here, but 2 million, 3 million people are suffering. So it's a moral judgment that the U.S. has to make as a people. That everybody of us, every individual has to make on his own, even in his individual activities.
Probably time for one more question. Anyone's dying to ask? Okay. Well, thank you again for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.